is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jerome is next up in Birmingham.
What's going on, Mr. Finebaum?
Hey, Jerome.
Hey, listen. Now, you had that report on from Mississippi, man. He just wasted his time, Finebaum. You know and I know that the state of Mississippi, the best thing ever happened to them, Paul, was Ole Miss beating Alabama. You hear me, Paul? That was the best thing happened to them clowns, Paul. They finished. You hear me? You couldn't put them clowns together this year, Paul, and win nothing in the SEC. You hear me? That's the closest they'll ever get to a national championship, Paul. The Georgia Lottery, they like to warn it, Paul, but their chances is over. And listen, Paul, when you went back the other day and dissected little Nicky conversation or interview, Paul, you picked the right subject when you talked about that Taylor kid. You know that? You hit a home run, Paul. You got all these thanks calling in trying to tell them why little Nicky shouldn't have did this or why little Nicky shouldn't have did this. But guess what? When Jesus Christ died, he died for second chances, Paul. He didn't put no stipulations on it. None whatsoever. But I tell you what, I'm gonna be with little Nicky. We're gonna stick these clowns in their ass with all this crap, Paul. Roll Tide and have a good day.
Thank you, Jerome. Always a little bit of a message in Jerome's phone call. Channing is in Nashville. Channing, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Well, I have the pleasure and curse of being a Tennessee Volunteers fan all my life. And, you know, I think like everyone else, I'm a little confused about this OC hire more than anything. And I trust Butch Jones, but, you know, it's not one I would have thought. But my question is, what kind of role do you see him playing? Because he comes in replacing Mike Jakin, who's quarterback's coach. And from my research, he doesn't have much history there. So do you think they're going to do a little bit of shuffle of coordinators? Do you think that Butch is going to take over that?
Listen, Channing, I'm just going to give you my view from 200 miles away from Knoxville. And some of this is based on what we heard from John Adams. Some of it's common sense. I think if Butch Jones is to the point in his career where he doesn't need to impress anyone, he's got this program rolling. He's not trying to hire Lane Kiffin just to show – I don't mean that in Tennessee, but a name like Lane Kiffin because he's trying to fade the heat. Saban needed to change the dynamic of that program a year ago. That's why I brought in Kiffin. It worked. Bajakian was close to Jones. He left. Perhaps he was surprised. Maybe he was caught off guard. And maybe a list of people that he would have preferred were already taken. So what did he do? He brought in someone he's comfortable with. He worked for him. It was this man who gave Butch Jones a big opportunity in Michigan many years ago. This guy has been a big-time coordinator, just not in most people's lifetime.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I understand that. It's just, and I hope that he does well. You know, not one I would have thought, but I appreciate.
Well, let me ask you one final thing, Channing. I mean, Butch Jones is what kind of a coach? I mean, this is his baby. So maybe he's choosing to get more involved. Maybe he wants to be. I don't know the answer to that, and we'll ask Butch the next time we visit with him. But sometimes these things are not as simple. I've seen coaches hire a lot of former head coaches before because you want them on your staff. What's the best hire in college football this year, according to most people? It's Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp he was run out of Gainesville. He failed. Now he's a hero. He can change that quickly. Now there's a difference between being a head coach and a coordinator, but in the board's case, he's been a head coach. He's been a coordinator. I think John said he coached quarterbacks 30 years ago. He's done a lot of things in a career. He knows how to do it all, but mostly I think he's there for comfort, for Butch Jones to have a wingman as he tries to take this program to a level it hasn't been in a very long time. Debbie, on this Friday afternoon, is next up from Alabama.
Hi, Paul. Hi,
hey,
Don. How are y'all doing on this beautiful Friday afternoon?
We are well.
Thank you for letting everybody know that I have already claimed you for the off season.
Oh yeah, I'm
at
taking
the first of the season. Now I'm wondering, to nail this down, do I need to send you a letter of intent and have you sign it and your wife sign it.
No, Debbie, let me say this. I consider, it's always easy to consider yourself an honest person. But you have my word. And that's as far as I'm going based on having several consultations today with a group of attorneys.
Okay.
Nothing in writing.
Nothing in writing. Nothing in. We don't want any paper trail.
I'll tell you a funny
No
story.
paper trail.
I have a good friend. Years ago, I asked him. I said, "What's your email? I need to send something." He said, "I don't do email." And he didn't do email because he never wanted to leave a trace.
Guess
what? Guess what? The guy served about 5 years in prison. Didn't make any difference. They caught him. I have been caught up in cases before where they look at your email. My feeling is you can look at any. I'm an open book. If you want to check my email,
you're a gentleman and a scholar, and I take a gentleman's word over anything.
But I'd hate for somebody to look at my cell phone records.
You are so funny. You make my day every day. And if you know the life I have had to lead and gone through, you would know how much it means that you put a smile on my face.
Well, Debbie, I won't ask, but I can sense that you've been through a lot. I'm glad that we have brought you some sunshine on an otherwise cloudy day.
You gonna start singing to me?
I'll tell you what. I just hope. I mean, it's bad enough sitting here for 4 hours with a camera on you for someone who's never been through this before. I just don't want to have to sit here the next time you call hooked up to a heart monitor.
Okay. Are you saying you don't want me to call you anymore?
No, I'm just saying I don't want anybody to see how my heart goes pitter-patter when you do call.
Oh, you are so sweet. Now, I look forward to lunch, and you can bring your brother from another mother.
Yeah.
Debbie,
my visits to Alabama have been very brief in recent months. I will admit I snuck in there recently, but I was there for a specific reason, and I wasn't there very long.
Right.
But this spring and summer, there are quite a few visits back to Alabama, and we will have to. I don't want to use the word hook up. We'll have to meet.
Meet.
Yeah.
I would love to meet you.
Yeah, hooking up is a young person's phrase.
Yeah, those are young people. Me and you were born in 1955. We don't.
Yeah, we don't hook up.
We don't hook up.
But when we do hook up, anyway, I'll save that for later. I'm getting carried away here.
Yeah. Love you, Paul.
Oh, I feel the same way about you, Debbie.
Right.
Thanks for the call.
Have a great weekend.
Wow. Happens every time. Let's go from one of the most upbeat people in my life to Debbie Downer. That is Charles from Reeltown.
Well, Paul, I don't want to be a downer. I want to say I'm sorry for yesterday. I got frustrated and upset. I thought you was hanging up on me, and you said it was my phone. I don't know if it's my phone.
Well, Charles, I do apologize because sometimes, I'm sorry that you called and threatened us a couple of times. We're over it. We're a forgiving nation, Charles.
Well, I am too. That's why. But Paul, I ain't disappointed in y'all. Not on your part. I'm disappointed in myself that I got that frustrated and upset.
Well, Charles, let me do this. I'm not a priest. I'm not a minister. I can't do anything more than say to you that let's hit the reset button. Let's let bygones be bygones, and let's start today with a clean slate.
I'll do that, Paul. I appreciate it. I know you wouldn't hang up on me on purpose.
No, Charles, that's one thing I would never do.
I know you
would be to hang. I would never hang up on you.
I just say now, somebody send an email in and want to go out on a date with Phyllis. I want them women out there, somebody say they want to go on a date with Charles in real time.
Charles, is it getting that bad?
It's worse than that, Paul.
Hmm.
I'm at the bottom of the barrel.
Charles, I don't think it's an appropriate question to ask you how long it's been since you had a date, but how long has it been?
It's been a while, you know. I'm getting a little.
What's a wild? What's a while, Charles?
A while? Probably a few months now. You know,
so it's been. Come on, Charles. You shoot straight with me. How long has it been since you had a date with a woman?
What do you think I meant when I said a couple of months?
Well,
I had a date with a man. I don't date no men.
I mean, I know they have that new law in Alabama now.
No, heck with that law. I ain't one of them kind, Paul. I'm against all that gay marriage stuff.
Oh.
It says in the Bible it's an abomination unto the Lord.
Yeah.
Homosexual won't enter into the kingdom of heaven. I believe all that.
I know you do, Charles. And you have a lot of company right now in believing that, and you're certainly entitled to whatever you would like to believe in. My question is, again, I didn't ask you if you wanted to date a man, although I do know a few guys that have asked for your number.
Oh, God, come on, Paul.
My question to you is, don't tell me a few months. Give me a date. When, if you had to pinpoint how long it's been, what month did you last take a woman out on a real date?
What do you mean by a real date?
Well, I'm talking about go pick her up. I'm not talking about running into somebody at the feed store.
Are you talking about anything else?
Well, it's up to you, Charles. Or what was okay? Let me ask you: is it okay, Mark? When was the last time? I'll leave it at that, Charles.
Well, Paul, it's been a few years. I can't remember the exact date. When you go back 2 years or more, you can't remember the damn exact date.
Charles, not to get overly personal here, but if it had been a few years, I think I would remember the exact date.
Well, I don't.
I would remember where I was.
I'm trying to forget that date, Paul.
And with whom?
I don't even know her now, you know.
You don't even know her name?
I forgot about it, Paul. I don't want to know.
So
yeah, I know her name. I'll tell you her name. It was a girl named Diane.
Diane?
Yeah. Well, I'm getting mighty personal now. You getting mighty personal with me, and I'm
hey, if your name was Jack, we could do a John Cougar Mellencamp song about you.
Well, my name ain't Jack.
Remember that song, Jack and Diane?
Yeah, I remember that. But I don't know why.
This is truly the most depressing call in the history of this show.
Ain't it?
Charles, do you remember that song many years ago by Todd Rundgren? I know we're going 70s here. You ever heard of him?
Who?
Todd Rundgren.
Heck no. What kind of singer is he?
He was a pop rocker in the early 70s. He wrote a song called "We've Got to Get You a Woman."
Well, I need to play that song. What suggestions did he have?
And the last line of the song was, "We've got to get you a woman, and when we get you one, will you get me one too?" Charles,
what does that mean?
It means we just need to get you one. Forget me. We need to get you one, and we also need to we need to run here, Charles, because if this conversation goes on much longer, I'm going to start hitting myself in the head with this coffee cup.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we welcome you back to the program. And as many of you were going to sleep last night, news broke, and big news broke, that Reese Davis was moving into Chris Fowler's spot as the host of College Game Day. Of course, Reese Davis has been an integral part of ESPN for many, many years. The announcement was made official, and Reese Davis joins us from Gainesville, where he'll be hosting College Game Day basketball style tomorrow morning and tomorrow night. Reese, congratulations. Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Paul. Nice to talk to you.
I assume that after having to do the National Signing Day all day, the company took some mercy on you and gave you a promotion. That was a tough day for you.
It was well, any day's a tough day that you spend with a Luganville. No, it was quite an undertaking. It was really a good team that they put together for signing day, and it was fun, but it is long. After a while, your head starts spinning. We started getting in a big discussion about which kid was it that put on the UCLA gloves. No, was it Jamabo? No, I think it was Saquon Smith. Everything starts sort of running together after 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know sometimes it's difficult to talk about new positions, but this is something that some have speculated on. The media has certainly been wagging its tail, but I thought it was really unique the way the very first thing you said in the company statement was paying tribute to Chris Fowler, who hosted that show for 25 years, and I think all would say hosted it about as well as anyone has ever hosted a show in the history of television.
Look, there's no question about that, Paul. Chris is the consummate professional. He's as good a host as we've seen in our generation in television, and I consider him a friend. And when you put as much time and energy into a project as Chris put into Game Day, then you have a real ownership with it. I mean, as Chris and I communicated, as this process was winding up, he said in some ways it felt like, you'd raised a child to a certain level and you have to turn it loose at some point. And, I certainly understand those feelings. I know that, it's a little bit of a different thing, but, to draw as close a comparison as I can, I feel the same way about this basketball show, and I feel the same way about my relationship with Mark and Lou. I mean, Mark and I have been on television on College Football Saturdays for 15 years, and it's going to be an adjustment for me. And I'm thrilled to death and excited and, can't wait for the opportunity. But, with change comes a little bit, I guess, of nostalgia or melancholy or whatever, looking back at other things as well. So, while I'm obviously very excited about the future, I'm also, you kind of take a moment and look back at what's happened over the last several years, and you're grateful for the people you've worked with who have helped you get in position to take this step.
Yeah, it's always maybe awkward interviewing someone while both of us work for the same company. But what can you tell us about the process, and when did you know that this would be part of a new arrangement with the company, a long-term arrangement, I should say?
Well, I think that any time, Paul, and you know this from dealing with contract negotiations, whenever you get to a point where your contract is nearing an end and you start talking with the decision makers about what your aspirations and goals are, they don't necessarily always just fit into one particular thing. You don't always just go in and in this case, I didn't go in and say that I want this particular show or that particular game. You talk about levels of assignment, things that you would like to do in terms of something that seems rewarding and important to the company, and that dovetail with what you view as important in the particular sports that you cover. And those were the types of discussions that I had with management of ESPN. And one thing that I will say without fail is that with both me and my representative, that they were completely forthright. They expressed from the very beginning, well over a year ago, to try to find a path that would be rewarding for both of us, that would keep me there. And they made me feel as if they wanted to keep me there, and they valued my work, which I greatly appreciated, because ESPN's been my professional home for 20 years, and I've got some really deep ties with the entire organization, both with administration and certainly with my on-air colleagues. And I'm very grateful and happy that that's going to continue for the next several years.
And Reese, when you spend that long at a company, certainly it's difficult to look around and maybe even leave, but there have been several media reports, to say the least, that other entities were wooing you. Did it ever come close to you walking away from ESPN to go to a competitor?
Well, I think, Paul, that those types of things are, maybe something that I wouldn't discuss publicly necessarily, but it's a situation, as I said, that ESPN was terrific in letting me know from the very beginning that they wanted to find something that worked well for both of us. And I certainly made it known that I greatly appreciated the 20 years that I've had up to this point and hope that would continue. And they were diligent in their efforts and completely above board from the very beginning. And I tried to be the exact same way. And so I'm glad that it's worked out the way it has.
On the subject of game day, I realize your plate's been full. You did a complete season. You hosted the national championship game, and you moved right into basketball, not only hosting game day, but doing a game. But I'm sure as you're flying around the country, your mind has wandered a little bit toward next fall. Do you see any dramatic changes or any tweaks, or how will you or when will you approach game day, the football edition?
I think that, I've always been thinking about it. I've talked to Kirk, obviously already. I've reached out and put in a call to Lee, and David and I are obviously, as I think you already know, David and I are very close, and, we've talked pretty much throughout this process. So I think, the one thing, I have to name everybody, but, I've reached out to Tom and Samantha and a lot of other people, Desmond as well. And, so I think that the one thing that will help us in establishing a chemistry, which anytime you change the people on the set, the chemistry is going to be tweaked. That just comes by definition. But I think the good thing about it is that I already have good relationships with the people that I'm going to be working with. I feel like that, that Kirk and I have a good relationship. Desmond and I do. I feel like I have all the respect in the world for Coach Corso, who is the ultimate superstar of that show. That's the moment that everybody waits for every Saturday morning. So I'm very fortunate to already have a good relationship with those guys. We'll continue to try to, meet and exceed, hopefully, the standard of excellence that Chris has set by leading the way the last 25 years. And, he set the bar very high, obviously, because he's so good at what he does. And I think that while there will certainly be some differences in chemistry, just because, contrary to what some of the commenters on some of the websites said, we are, in fact, different people. Billis sent me that. Billis loved that. He said some of the commenters are saying they didn't realize until today that Chris and I were different people. But, we're a little bit, we're individuals. So it's going to change chemistry a little bit, just the way it is, just as it changed, when Desmond became a part of the show, and it changed again when David became a bigger part of the show. That's the nature of the beast. But in terms of, that show doesn't need any kind of big overhaul. It's a staple and the defining show for a college football Saturday morning, and it's not as if it needs any kind of big change. They certainly have done a wonderful job with it. Chris has set a great standard, and we're going to have a great time continuing to maintain that and turning the page and opening a new chapter of game day.
Reese Davis, congratulations again, the new host of College Game Day. Be well, Reese. Talk soon.
All right, Paul. Thank you.
Really great stuff. The news breaking last night that Reese Davis taking over for Chris Fowler, who will be concentrating more of his efforts on the Saturday night primetime game with Kirk Herbstreit. 25 years as the host of College Game Day. Really interesting and a compelling conversation there with Reese. We'll take a break. Get your reaction to that and more as we continue on a Friday afternoon.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Once the season ends, we let our hair down. Well, some of us do. During the season, it's pretty buttoned down, going campus to campus. But we've been having some interaction on social media. We asked a question about SEC experiences, which one you would like. We have asked a question about would you rather go to Bob Marley's birthday party or Babe Ruth, and the answer is actually Ronald Reagan, all three born on this date many years ago. So we will keep that going, and you can continue to hashtag Finebaum Friday and your SEC experiences on social networking. We've chatted with Reese Davis, the new host of College Game Day, Hugh Kellenberger of the Clarion Ledger about the recruiting classes in Ole Miss, and John Adams on the new offensive coordinator. Still a few more guests to go. We'll talk about Kentucky basketball as they head to Florida. Certainly a dangerous game, even though the Gators have not been great this year. They did beat Alabama last week in Tuscaloosa, and that game will be worth watching tomorrow night. Perry is next up in Arkansas. Good afternoon, Perry.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
Pretty well, thank you.
About the Bob Marley and Babe Ruth, I'll tell you, I'd like to see would be Bill Clinton. But to the game day with Reese Davis, love Reese Davis, he's great. Chris Fowler's just the best. You know, I'm in my early 40s and I've been watching the show since it first aired. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'm probably wrong, but was Tim Brando the first host of that show?
Tim Brando, Bino Cook, and I believe Lee Corso, could be wrong about that, were the first
Well, I remember Bino being on there, but I thought Tim Brando had also been.
And they did the show from the studio. The show did not go on the road. I actually happened to be at the first game they ever went out. It was in 1993 in November when Notre Dame played Florida State. It was a 1-2 game at South Bend, one of the biggest football games I can ever remember. And that was the first time game day.
Charlie Ward threw the interception in the game. It was a great game.
It was a great game.
Yeah, I just think Chris Fowler, jack of all trades. I mean, the professional get. I love you guys on the SEC show, but, you know, they were the first. And
no, let me say this, Perry. I've never seen anyone better than Chris Fowler, so I don't need to say anything else other than that.
No, I was just wanted to say, you know, I miss him, and I like Reese, miss Chris Fowler, and love the whole game day crew. I love y'all's crew, and I love Lee Corso. You got to love Lee Corso, so I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunately that's going to be another one of those when Coach Corso decides to retire. I think he's 78. Those are shoes that will be pretty difficult to fill.
Yeah, yes, I will. I appreciate it, Paul.
Thanks, Perry. Good to hear from you. We run next to Ron in Florida. Ron, good afternoon.
What's going on, Paul?
Oh, all good.
That's what's up. You got Mellow Ron today. I got two things for you, man. First of all, I was looking at Alabama's schedule, you know, and I was listening to you the other day as you were talking about a concern for the SEC, and at first I was like, oh, man, I don't know what Paul's talking about. But then I looked at the schedule, and, man, Alabama, I've never seen a schedule looking that nasty in a long, long time. And right now, I'm just saying as an SEC fan, I would rather see them go try to challenge, you know, the Big Ten, because you already know the perception on how they feel like national championships is the only thing that they want to see or whatever to feel like they're number one. We're better top to bottom, but, you know, I feel like we need to juggernaut.
By the way, let me quickly go through the schedule. Start with Wisconsin. That's in Dallas. Middle Tennessee. Ole Miss at home. And Monroe. I mean, I think Alabama should get through that part of the schedule. Then October 3rd at Georgia, Arkansas at home, at A&M, Tennessee at home, LSU at home, at Mississippi State, Charleston Southern, and at Auburn. Oh, man, that is a very scary schedule. I agree with you on that.
Wisconsin, too. So,
well, yeah,
I mean, I know they lost Melvin Gordon, but it's just to happen to play all these type of stressful games.
Let me ask you a question, Ron. Considering what Saban has gone through, I mean, what if the unthinkable happened and Nick Saban goes back-to-back, losing to two Big Ten schools in a row?
Because we already know, we already know that Auburn is not, I don't want to see anybody else do it but Alabama right now. But the way it's looking with that schedule, we may see Auburn have to go in there, and that's what I'm worried about. We know that they're not ready to see an Ohio State that's revamped and probably better. So it is a concern on the side of the way that they're going to view it. If we lose another playoff or another national championship, then they're going to say this and say that, and I don't even want to hear it. We already got enough Ohio callers calling right now. So there is a slight concern. Nick has got to be on his game. You know what I'm saying? If he's not on his game, man, they're in trouble.
Good stuff, Ron. Thank you very much. Really nice of you to call. Rich is next up in Atlanta. Hey, Rich.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm no Danny Sheridan, but Alabama will be at least 3 touchdown favorites against Wisconsin. That's got Michigan written all over it. I'd be more concerned about Auburn and some of the other teams than Wisconsin. Honestly, that's just how I feel. Maybe not 21, Paul, but they're gonna stomp them, because if you look at traditionally how Alabama's built, they're built to beat a team like LSU, and Wisconsin's built in that same way. So basically, with the downhill running, the 250-pound inside linebackers, they're going to crush Wisconsin. So I feel pretty good about that. But anyway, that's not why I called. I've been trying to call this week, but I keep getting distracted with the Jonathan Taylor stuff. I wanted to ask your opinion on recruiting as it relates to, how do I want to say, illegal enticements. It just doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. Is it more sophisticated? Has it gone away? Has it? What is your opinion on that?
I don't think it's gone away. I think you have to be more careful. I mean, years ago, you and I remember, wasn't that big a deal for a booster just to lay a wad of cash on a high school prospect. Or leave it in his front yard. Well, yeah. But nowadays, I can't tell you I know for a fact how it's done, but the key is washing the money.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of the latest recruiting scandals, if you will, and the recruiting side of it, when Cecil Newton repeddled his son from Mississippi State and Auburn, and then maybe Willie Lyles, who got Chip Kelly out of Oregon. But that's it. I can't think of any other, because, again, we mentioned Albert Means, you think of Hartley Dykes, you think of Marcus Dupree, you think of the old Southwestern Conference. I mean, it was so much more prevalent, it seemed then, than now, and that's why I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, well, first of all, Rich, you have to remember there's a big reason you don't hear about it anymore, but because the NCAA is an inept organization that couldn't find a scandal if they tried. I mean, the NCAA basically just reacts when schools and conferences come to them.
Right.
They used to actually investigate and follow leads. Now, I mean, they're afraid of their own shadow. They've had a disastrous record in court, so you're not going to see too many cases. And by the way, as a former investigative reporter, where did the NCAA usually find out about scandal? In a newspaper, in a magazine, in a publication, or a broadcast report. They've never been all that great about digging up information on their own.
Right. That's a good. Well, they never had subpoena power either.
No, of course
not. Their whole law enforcement arm, if you will. I mean, it's probably understaffed to start with, and then they have no subpoena power. So I was just wondering what your take was, because, again, you never hear of it anymore. I mean,
because they just don't want to deal with it anymore, Rich. It's beyond their purview. Anyway, let's continue. Linda in Argo, Alabama on this Friday. Hey, Linda.
Hey, Paul. How are you? Hey, John. How are you?
We're all well. Thanks.
Good. Right quickly, I wish your heart would pitter-patter for me like it does for Debbie. I'm a little jealous.
Well, Linda, I'm always up for a new experience. And by the way, I wouldn't have any difficulty trying to remember your name since my wife's name is Linda.
Oh, well,
It'd be really easy,
cool.
Frankly.
Yes, I knew your wife's name was Linda, yes, and I'm sure she's a real nice lady. But I've got a nickname for you, which is Cutie Pie.
Ooh.
And for John, he can either take beefcake or stud muffin, whichever one he prefers.
Good choice.
A little hearty meal, beefcake works well.
Beefcake.
But anyway, I wanted to touch on...
in my entire life, Linda, no one's ever described me as beefcake.
That's a first for me, too.
Well, you can be beefcake if he wants to take stud muffin.
Yeah, I may have to put on a pound or two to be a beefcake.
But you're definitely a cutie pie. I love you and John both. I love your show. I really, really love your show.
Well, thank you.
And I see John smiling over the. What is he saying over there?
Well, he's just getting his centerfold cut out for the Stud Muffin calendar.
Okay. But I wanted to touch on Chris Fowler. I got in a while ago, and I seen that he's leaving game day as the host. And I'm really going to miss him. Now, I like Reese Davis, too, but I really love Chris Fowler. I'm going to miss him. And why is he leaving again?
Well, he's a year ago, Chris signed a new deal with ESPN that put him in the primetime Saturday night game. And I don't know all the details, but he did one more year of game day. It was his 25th. I'm guessing it was symbolic that he wanted to finish the circle. But to do what they do, and Kirk does the same thing, I mean, to be in Tuscaloosa, for instance, on a Saturday morning and then get on a plane and fly to L.A. or to Chicago or to State College or wherever, it's very difficult. And I think Chris, considering how important that Saturday night game is, particularly to be the play-by-play announcer, I think Chris decided that he just needed to devote all of his energies to that.
Oh, I understand. And one more thing, I called in Monday and was just kind of putting Charles from Reeltown down, saying I wouldn't have him if he was the last man on earth. And then I heard his call today on the radio as I was coming in, and I felt so bad. Now I feel so sorry for him. I mean, he hasn't had a date in 2 or 3 years. My goodness.
Yeah,
I feel bad for him now.
I'm not accusing Charles of conflating the issue, but I think it's been longer than that.
It probably has been. He sounded really sad today. I felt bad for him.
I remember talking to him a couple of years ago, and it had been a couple of years. I think that couple of years is just a line that he regurgitates every time it comes up. It's been a lifetime for Charles, I think.
It may have been as sad as he sounded today.
Yeah,
I mean, I really feel bad for him.
Linda, he didn't sound that sad the night of the Iron Bowl when we did our show, and he called in about as depressed as I've ever heard any human being who still had a heartbeat.
Yeah, I remember that. I heard that call in.
Well, Linda, I have to tell you, I hope Debbie's not listening, but I'm not trying to play one against the middle, but I'm thinking about heading to Argo right now.
Okay, cool. We can have lunch. We can meet.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I heard Debbie say, we could hook up, but that's young people talk. We can meet.
We'll just grab. I mean, I've been to Argo. It's a great place. I'm sure we'll find some place to chow down.
Oh, yes. There's plenty places, and I live real close to Trustful, probably about 7 or 8 miles from Trustful, right there at Deerfoot,
I know the road well.
Yes, you do. I bet you do. But we can meet at Publix and have some lunch or have a cup of coffee. Yeah. I'll take you out for a cup of coffee and tell John to tell Stud Muffin he can come along if he wants to.
Thanks, Linda. Appreciate it. I think we ought to meet at a Publix. That's a grocery store. I don't think anyone would notice this in Birmingham. Not at all. We'll take a break. What a night. Don't go anywhere. I may get another date before this thing's over with.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Hiram is in Selma, and you are next up. Hello, Hiram.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Look, I know far as Selma, I know you go back a long way with Selma, Alabama.
I sure do. Very beginning of my career.
The mayor, lawyer, and all of that, because
I didn't know Selma was going to become so famous it had its own movie made after it.
Yeah, it sure did. But it didn't do too good or whatever. For what reason, why, who knows, But I just talking about Chris Fowler, what I'm saying? They get doing that and changing him with that. I can't understand all this. His contract run out or whatever.
Well, what happened was Chris's contract was up last year, and Reese's contract was up this year. Usually when someone's contract is up, I don't know about these things. You try to leverage whatever you can and get the best possible situation.
Yeah, but in my opinion, as far as forecasting games or whatever, as Gary and Byrne, they're the two best guys I've ever heard of on CBS calling ball games.
Mm-hmm.
They are good. They're very good. They can predict. They can tell you what they need to do, and then they do it. You know, I wonder if they ever decided to become coaches or whatever, because they can read play. I'm talking about what they need to do with them, and 99% of the times they're right. You know?
Yeah, I don't think Gary. Yeah, thanks for the call, Harm. I don't think Gary Danielson wants to coach. I think he's doing pretty well as an analyst for CBS. Let's check out Lance next in Tennessee. Lance, good afternoon.
Boy, I wish I had a little sister like Daryl cry all the time. I mean, that kid genius. He won't call in during the season talking about Mark Richt. He wasn't even fired after Florida beat him to death in Jacksonville, son. Now he wants to know why he can't get no credit for winning 10 games, because you can't win a championship, son. If you're in the SEC and you don't win the national championship, just ask Alabama if you get any respect. Nobody cares, son. And let me tell you about this ball hop. It's really starting to piss me off, too, because I'm going to tell you, this offensive coordinator, it ain't going to hurt them in the minds of Tennessee fans because they're too damn naive to know anything. Hell, last year they went 4-0, thought they was going to win the national championship. I mean, it's going to hurt them in recruiting, Paul. You write that down. That offensive coordinator is going to hurt them in recruiting. Florida about to pass them up again.
I'm waiting for the interpreter. Larry is up next. What do you say, Larry?
Hey, cutie pie, BTK, y'all getting along today?
We're doing great, great.
Hey, great. You know what, methamphetamine is a really bad addiction. Bless that old boy's heart. Hey, the last couple of days, I've been just kind of too depressed to call in there. Everybody's talking about that big old boy that's whooping everybody all over Georgia and Alabama, and I didn't think it'd get any worse. Then Glenn calls in back-to-back days. Boy, I had to go Percocet and Xanax after listening to him. He did say one thing yesterday that perked me up, talking about Scooby, and I thought he was going to talk about Scooby-Doo, of course, only interesting thing he would ever say, and then he was talking about something I never heard of, so that's a bummer. Hey, as far as that big old boy that's whooping everybody, it's real simple. Story don't really care. I mean, he thought he could help the team. He vetted him top to bottom, up, down, all around, and if he can't make it, he just cuts bait with him. Ain't no biggie. He ain't Father Flanagan running no boys home. One thing he does have in common with the Bears, and everybody's always mentioning the Bears, even though he's been gone for 30, 40 years, that's part of people's problem. They're living in the past. He's the most powerful man most powerful man in Alabama, and he don't really care what any of them think. And the last thing I'll say, I've been so disgusted, I'm going to have to quit the show, Mr. Finebaum. Talk to you much. Thanks, Paul.
Mickey is next in Georgia. Mickey, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Just wanted to comment about the college game day crew. You talked about Chris Fowler. Any idea how much longer Lee Corso is going to hang on? Because it would seem to me if Lee were to be gone, you're talking about the heart being torn out of the program now. I can't even begin to fathom that program without Lee Corso. Yeah,
that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. There has been a lot of speculation. He seems like he's made a nice recovery from his bout a couple of years ago with illness, and I've been around Lee a number of different times, and at 78, he still has it. So hopefully that day isn't anywhere near.
Can I ask you one more thing? We've got a kid here in Georgia, down in Macon County, still holding out. Everybody thought that Georgia, of course I'm an Alabama fan, but all the Georgia folks thought he was heading out to UCLA. But with the defensive coordinator, I think the guy that recruited him looks like he's going to be going to the Atlanta Falcons. The guy's sitting there waiting, and I know that Georgia wants him badly. I just can't understand the hesitation on his part, what he's waiting on to make a commitment to wherever it is he's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, Mickey, in the Jefferson case, I think it's really about an assistant coach who left. I'm not sure. You may know more about this case than me, although I'm familiar with it. Yeah, we act like it's the end of the world. It's only been 2 days since National Signing Day, and they do have a window where they still have more time. So if I don't know what it is, but I don't know why it's as big a deal as we make it sometimes, that someone can't decide in 1 day or 2 days where they're going to spend the next 3 to 5 years. Let's continue with more calls, and Al is up next. What do you say, Al?
Paul, any truth to the rumor that Coach Saban orchestrated that Reese Davis deal?
Well, I tried to ignore the fact that Reese Davis is an Alabama graduate.
Paul, you're an old newspaper man, aren't you?
Proud of it.
Do you think that the Columbus Dispatch in Columbus, Ohio, is probably a pretty reputable newspaper, wouldn't you say?
At one time it was.
Paul, I found an article on Wednesday in the Dispatch that said that, interestingly enough, Ohio State has some players leaving the team for career-ending injuries. Here the day is finding. How about this? The article went on to say that Ohio State signed a larger-than-expected recruiting class, but they did that with the knowledge of those career-ending injuries. They also went on to say, without further attrition, they would exceed their 85 scholarship limit. I didn't think that happened at Ohio State. So
I don't know. I'm texting Andy right now to see if he could get back with us on that, but he was too busy. He's waiting outside of a jail for some prisoners to be released.
Paul, as always, the boss don't dig me, so he put me on the night shift. It takes me 2 hours to get back to where my baby lives. Paul, have a good day.
You got it. Another Springsteen theme on this Friday afternoon. Quick break. We'll see if we can find fact from fiction on the C.C. Jefferson situation. So far, we've been unable to. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we welcome you back. And according to sports handicapper Danny Sheridan, Kentucky opening a 7.5-point favorite tomorrow in tomorrow's game in Gainesville. That has to be one of the tightest lines of the year. Of course, Kentucky has played a number of big-time schools and been pretty convincing. He covers the Bluegrass State like no one else. He is Matt Jones, and we're always delighted to welcome him to our program. Had a great visit with him when we were in Lexington outside Commonwealth Stadium a few months ago. Matt, much has changed since then. Kentucky has struggled and limped to the end of the football season, but the basketball hasn't been too bad. Good afternoon. Good evening. How are you?
Hey, good to talk to you, Paul. Yeah, it was a bad end of the football season. They were kind of a victim of their hardest games all being at the end. But basketball has been pretty amazing. This is one of the best teams we've seen in Kentucky, and now the question is, they got 9 games left. Can they finish undefeated and be the first major conference team since 1976 to do that?
Yeah, we had an opportunity to talk to Cal last week, and we just played some of his cuts on television, and he doesn't seem to be too hung up one way or the other. I know you, much to the chagrin of your massive audience up there, have opined that you think this team may lose a game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think they may drop one. First of all, I don't believe that Calipari doesn't care about it. I know that's what he says, but I also know him decently well. He wants to go undefeated. I think it's not an obsession because he knows if they lose one, he doesn't want the team or the fans to think the season is over. But he wants it. He's competitive. He's the most competitive person I've ever met, and he wants it. I think they lose one, but I'm not confident about it. I just believe, and Calipari says this, and I've always thought this is true, in the course of a college basketball season, you play 4 games that you play out of your mind, and then you play 4 just clunkers. And the question is, most teams lose their clunkers. I think Kentucky's played 3 clunkers, and they found a way to win them, at Texas A&M being the most obvious example. I still think they got one in them. The problem is, if it comes on one of these games on the road, the teams they play can beat them. So I'm not confident about it, but I hear like Seth Greenberg and I heard Shane Battier say, oh, there's no way they're going to lose one. I don't think that's true. I mean, I think they can lose one. If they don't play well, they could lose Saturday. But I don't think they're losing more than one, and it would not shock me at all if they won them all.
And certainly tomorrow night, I mean, you almost manufacture storylines in the SEC this year, and we know about the 2 early overtime games. The first one was a shock. Tomorrow night in Gainesville, that's usually one of those moments in the winter that everyone is riveted to. Certainly game day there, prime time. Are Kentucky fans, I mean, I know they're aware of the game, they're aware of every game, but what does this game mean to them?
Well, Florida's still the biggest rival Kentucky has in the conference. So I think they are, of course, well, like you said, in Kentucky, Paul, they're aware of every game, just like Alabama is on football. I mean, every game is analyzed, studied, and But Florida is the special one. I think there's a reason that line's only 7.5. That's a surprise to a lot of people. I mean, I think I'd heard a Vegas odds maker say every game was going to be double digits from here on out. But this came out at 7. It's gone up to 7.5. Florida's got talent. They've been hot garbage this year. I mean, they've been terrible, and they should be a lot better. This has been one of maybe the most disappointing Florida team I can remember. But they still have talent. And at the end of the day, Kentucky last year looked bad. You and I talked in February saying, what has happened to Kentucky? And then next thing you know, they're in the championship game. Now, I don't think Florida's going to the championship game, but they should be a lot better. And last year, Kentucky turned it around against Florida in the SEC tournament. Nearly won the game, lost when James Young fell at the end. It wouldn't shock me if tomorrow Florida turned it around and played their best game of the year against Kentucky.
Well, certainly the atmosphere will be truly unbelievable. I'm curious what you think, Matt. I mean, I know you swim in the Kentucky waters, which is understandable, and there is another team up there that has done reasonably well in recent years. But what is your view from the Bluegrass State about the rest of the SEC? We keep being told it's getting better, and then you see Auburn going into Baton Rouge last night and winning against a school that most people thought was not in Kentucky's league, but certainly a tournament team.
Well, it's not better this year. Now, I do think it will get better next year. Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, Florida will all have really good recruiting classes. Texas A&M and LSU may have the two best recruiting classes they've ever had. But I don't think it's good this year. I think teams 2 through 14, you could literally just, on any night, any of them can beat the others no matter where it is. I think the problem, Paul, is a problem of recruiting, and the bigger problem is that the South doesn't produce as many good basketball players as it used to. There was a time, you remember Wimp Sanderson's Alabama team. A lot of those kids are from Alabama. And for a lot of these programs to win in the SEC, they're going to have to get kids in-state because, Alabama, Mississippi State, Georgia, LSU, those are not name brands outside of those states in basketball. And these southern states, Mike DeCourcy has written about this, they just don't produce as many guys as they used to, with the exception of Georgia and Florida. And the guys, the great athletes that get produced are all playing football. And so I think what's made the biggest difference is I just look at who Kentucky recruits every year, because Kentucky recruits the best players in the country. And fewer numbers are coming from that southeast area. They still get some guys, but it's not like it was. I just don't think the South produces as many great basketball players as it did even 10 years ago, and certainly not 2025.
But even if, let's say, in Alabama or Mississippi, and remember, Mississippi used to produce an enormous amount of talent as well. If they did, let's just hypothetical here, and I'm sure that day will come, and John Calipari walks in there, what chance does the state school have against Cal right now?
Not a lot. I mean, the guys they produce, so let's use some examples. Archie Goodwin, one of the best players Arkansas has produced in 5 years, went to Kentucky. Malik Newman is from the state of Mississippi. He's looking at Mississippi State, and Kentucky. Jaylen Brown is from Georgia. He's looking at Georgia Tech, and Kentucky. Now, it's true, Kentucky's going to come in there and get the best 2 or 3. But I'm talking about the other guys, the guys below that. On the football side, the same thing happens to UK in football. Damian Harris was number 1 running back in America from the state of Kentucky. Alabama came and took him. There's not a lot you can do about that if you're Kentucky. But what used to happen in the South, Kenny Walker was from Georgia, but Georgia could still go get Dominique Wilkins or whatever. There were other guys that you could go and get, and I just don't see those guys. The talent gap, when Kentucky plays these teams, and Florida's the same way. They're down this year, but they've obviously been good. The talent gap is huge, and I do think a big part of it is just sheer numbers. I think the best athletes in the South, because football is so huge, they go and play football, and that has hurt the SEC.
Matt, last year was an extraordinary year. Kentucky started number 1. They fell off the face of the earth very quickly. They fought their way back, had that amazing run, and came up very short of winning the national title. So I can understand what the big topic was on your statewide show. This year, what is the topic other than Kentucky go undefeated?
Honestly, and this radio host, these last few weeks have been kind of difficult because I used to always say you want to be really good or really bad. Okay, but if you're a radio host, but if you're really good and you're winning every game by 15 points, it is kind of hard to figure out what you're talking about. So basically, it's a look around the country to say, you know, who could possibly play with Kentucky, Duke, Virginia, Wisconsin, et cetera. There's a lot of making fun of Louisville because with Bobby Petrino and Rick Pitino, they give you ammunition all the time, and Kentucky fans love to make fun of Louisville. But it is sort of a look to March, okay? Because the reality is the rest of this regular season is meaningless for Kentucky. They're going to be the number 1 overall seed, or maybe they'll be number 2 if Gonzaga doesn't lose again and Kentucky drops a game or two. They're going to play their first games in Louisville, then they'll go to Cleveland and Indianapolis. It's all close drives. It's all about March. For Kentucky, it's all about March. It's hard to get real motivated about anything right now. Even the enemies. You know, it used to be you could go after Bruce Pearl of Tennessee. Sometimes Florida's been good. Nobody's good. So it feels like you're kind of picking on little brothers all around the conference. The only issue is, do they lose one? And their best chances, in my opinion, are their next 2 games. At Florida, at LSU. They still play Georgia and Arkansas at the end of the year. But I think if they're going to lose one, they lose in these next 2, either Florida or LSU.
Matt, you mentioned having little to talk about because Kentucky beats everyone so badly. I remember there was a time when I was in Alabama. We used to have that problem talking about Alabama football. They were so dominant. Not anymore.
Yeah, well, but you always – that's true. And so the one thing I wish happened is I wish Kentucky and Louisville played basketball in February. I mean, with the Iron Bowl, last game of the year. I wish that game was upcoming. Because the SEC and Big 12 signed a thing where they're going to play in January, and so Kentucky would have played like Kansas or Texas. That would help. But the best thing Kentucky needs is they need the rest of the SEC to get better, because right now it's not where it needs to be.
Always great catching up with you, Matt. We'll hopefully we'll talk very soon. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul. You got to come to Lexington for a basketball game. We've done the Commonwealth, but we need you in Rupp.
Yeah, we've actually suggested that. I'm not sure anyone's listening, but I would be delighted to come up there. I love the place.
Yeah, well, I hope you do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Matt. Matt Jones, really just an incredibly influential voice in the state of Kentucky with some sobering comments about the SEC. Not good, unless you're Kentucky.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.